All right, get ready for this deep dive. We're going right to the heart of Brazilian Spiritism.
Really fascinating stuff.
And you might just have to rethink what you think a spiritual leader looks like. We're talking Cairbar Schutel, pharmacist, politician,
Wow.
NND, a powerhouse of Spiritism. And get this, his influence is still felt today.
What's really captivating about Schutel is how his story weaves together these totally different threads. It speaks to a larger truth,
Okay.
Our paths are rarely these straight lines, right? It's more like winding journeys with unexpected turns.
Yeah,
And sometimes those detours, they lead to the most profound destinations.
totally. And Schutel's story, it's anything but predictable. We've got biographical accounts, historical records, even Schutel's own writing.
Amazing.
They all paint this picture of a man who faced incredible loss, embraced these unconventional beliefs, and basically sparked a movement.
For those who might not be familiar with Spiritism, it's a blend of Christianity, spiritualism, and this unique focus on reincarnation.
And communication with spirits is huge.
Huge.
It's not just believing in the afterlife. It's about actively engaging with those who've passed on.
Absolutely. That connection to the spirit world is right at the center of Spiritism.
Okay.
Gaining wisdom, understanding, guidance from those who've crossed over. For Schutel, this wasn't just some abstract idea. It was the driving force of his life's work.
So let's rewind back to 1868, Rio de Janeiro. This is where Schutel's story starts.
Okay.
But his early life was marked by some really devastating losses. He lost both parents, A&D, a younger brother, all before he was even a teenager.
It's hard to even imagine the impact of such profound loss so young. Makes you wonder, it makes sense that he grappled with questions about life, death, and what comes after.
Yeah.
This early exposure to mortality probably planted the seeds for his fascination with the spirit world.
Almost like he had to lose himself to find himself.
Yeah.
So he moves to Sao Paulo, sets up shop as a pharmacist. He even jumps headfirst into politics. He becomes the first mayor of Matown.
This is where you start to see Schutel's leadership qualities emerge. His commitment to community. He wasn't just content with his own success,
Yeah.
He's actively involved in shaping the world around him.
Here's the twist, though. 1904, despite his Catholic upbringing, Schutel starts having these incredibly vivid dreams of his deceased parents.
Wow.
He's not satisfied with the church's answers, so he starts going to seances with friends, exploring this whole other realm of spiritual communication.
I think it's important to remember that Schutel wasn't easily swayed.
Yeah.
He didn't just jump on every bandwagon.
Right.
He dug into the foundational texts of Spiritism, written by Allan Kardec. Devoured all 5 books in just a month.
Talk about a crash course. It must have really resonated with him.
A profound awakening. Suddenly, all these different parts of his life, his early losses, his scientific mind, his drive to help others, it all starts to come together.
And that convergence explodes into action. Just a year later, he establishes the Amantes da Pobreza Spiritist Center. A&D launches a newspaper, O Clarim. And get this, it's still around today.
Back in the early 1900s, newspapers were everything for spreading ideas, for building movements. Schutel understood the power of communication, used it brilliantly to share Spiritism with a wider audience.
He wasn't just sharing these feel-good messages either. He was tackling some pretty intense topics, challenging religious dogma.
Right.
Even ended up in a heated conflict with a pretty well-known Catholic priest, Father João Batista Vaness.
This clash with the church is important, I think, because it forced Schutel to defend his beliefs publicly. He needed a lawyer. The whole ordeal just threw him into the spotlight, solidifying his role as a leader in the Spiritist movement.
Sounds like facing opposition just fueled him, earned him the nickname the Bandeirante of Spiritism.
Oh, wow.
Referencing those legendary Brazilian explorers, venturing into uncharted territory.
It's a good comparison, actually. Just as the Bandeirantes charted new physical frontiers, Schutel was mapping this new spiritual landscape, pushing the limits of what people understood, what they accepted about Spiritism.
But he wasn't just leading from the front lines. He was also actively living out those Spiritist principles. We're talking founding hospitals,
Really?
visiting prisoners, comforting grieving families.
It's amazing how Schutel bridges theory and practice. He wasn't just talking the talk, He was walking the walk, really showing how relevant and transformative Spiritism could be.
And his writing. Books, articles, pamphlets, you name it, he wrote it. He covered everything from explaining Spiritism to kids to grappling with these really complex theological arguments.
One of his most interesting works, I think, is A Vida no Altro Mundo,
What's that?
Life in the Other World, published in 1932. It gives you a glimpse into his enduring fascination with what lies beyond our earthly existence.
Just the title alone is fascinating.
It is.
It speaks to that basic human desire to understand the mysteries of life and death. And it shows how Schutel, even late in life, was still so engaged in exploring those questions.
But Schutel's impact wasn't limited to Brazil. In 1925, he launches the Revista Internacional de Espiritismo, a monthly publication that connected spiritists from all over the globe.
So he's building this global network of spiritual seekers,
Exactly.
fostering dialogue, sharing knowledge across borders. Incredibly forward-thinking, especially for that time.
Absolutely. Schutel knew that the search for meaning, for connection,
Hmm.
it transcends borders. He was laying the groundwork for a truly international spiritist movement.
So we've got this driven individual who survived incredible loss, embraced these unconventional beliefs, challenged religious authority, and he built a global network, all while actively living his truth. That's a life well lived.
It's inspiring, really. A testament to the power of passion, perseverance, and staying true to your purpose.
But like all stories, there's a final chapter. Schutel passes away in 1938 from a brain aneurysm. That same night, though, something remarkable happens. A message, attributed to Schutel himself, is psychographed by the medium Urbano de Assia Xavier.
Wow.
Wait, psychographed? What does it even mean in the context of Spiritism?
In Spiritism, psychography is about communicating with spirits through writing. Basically, a medium acts as this conduit, allows a spirit to express themselves through their handwriting.
So it's like the spirit is using the medium's hand to write a message from beyond.
Exactly.
That's incredible. What did Schutel's message say?
It said, vivi, vivo e vivrei porque su immortum, which translates to, I lived, I live, and I will live because I am immortal.
Wow, what a powerful statement.
It really encapsulates that core belief of Spiritism, the continuity of the soul. Death is not the end, but a transition to another realm.
It's the perfect final message from a man who dedicated his life to exploring the mysteries of life, death, and the eternal nature of the spirit.
There's so much more to Cairbar Schutel, though.
Yeah.
Join us in part 2 as we really get into his writings and explore his profound impact on Brazilian Spiritism and beyond. Welcome back to our deep dive into Cairbar Schutel. In this part, we'll shift gears a bit. We've covered the highlights of his life, but now I think it's time to zoom in on the details of his work.
It's easy to focus on those big milestones, right? The organizations he founded, the conflict with the church, his global reach.
Right.
But I'm curious about the everyday side of Schutel as a spiritist. What did it actually look like to live out those principles?
This is where his personal writings and stories from those who knew him become so valuable.
Okay.
We get these glimpses into how he interacted with people, his commitment to social causes, his constant effort to connect Spiritism with the wider community. It wasn't just about abstract ideas. He put those beliefs into action.
So less philosophy, more rolling up his sleeves, making a difference.
Exactly. Schutel was all about practical application. He really believed that social action was essential for spiritual growth. It's a concept that's still relevant today.
Can you give us some examples of how he put that into practice?
Sure. Remember that small hospital he founded in 1912?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't just about medical care. He wanted to be a center for holistic healing, combining spiritual care with those physical remedies. It's almost like he understood that true well-being involves the body and the soul.
That's a really modern way of thinking about healthcare, isn't it? Recognizing that our physical and spiritual selves are connected.
Absolutely. And his work with prisoners is another great example. He didn't visit them out of obligation or just because he felt he had to. He truly believed that they could change. He saw them not as criminals, but as people capable of spiritual growth.
Wait, how does that tie in with Spiritism?
Well, reincarnation is a core belief in Spiritism. The idea that we're all on this journey of spiritual progress over many lifetimes.
Okay.
So even those who had committed crimes, Schutel saw them as souls on a path to enlightenment. His compassion extended to everyone.
That's a powerful concept. It shifts the focus from punishment to rehabilitation, seeing the good in everyone, no matter their past.
Exactly. And this belief in transformation is maybe one of his greatest legacies. It's still a powerful message within Spiritist communities and beyond.
Like planting seeds of hope in even the toughest situations.
Yeah.
We touched on his writing before. What were some of the big themes he explored?
His writings were all over the place, but there are some recurring themes that give us insight into his beliefs and approach to Spiritism. One central theme is making Spiritism understandable. He wanted to explain those complex concepts in a way everyone could grasp.
So not your typical academic jargon.
Definitely not. His writing was engaging. He used stories, real-life examples to get his points across.
Hmm.
He wanted people to apply these principles, not just think about them.
It's kind of like what we do here on the Deep Dive. We try to make these complex topics engaging and relatable so people can explore these ideas and come to their own conclusions.
Exactly. And that leads to another key theme in Schutel's work: critical thinking.
Okay.
He urged his readers to question things, to look at things from different angles, to approach Spiritism with an open but critical mind.
He wasn't afraid of debate then.
Not at all. He would even engage with skeptics and critics. He thought those tough conversations could lead to a deeper understanding for everyone. Remember his run-in with Father Van Ness?
Yeah.
While it wasn't always pleasant, it did spark important conversations about religion and spirituality in society.
I bet those conversations were really important in Brazil back then. The country was changing so much,
Yeah.
socially, politically.
You're absolutely right. Schutel wasn't working in isolation. He was very much a product of his time,
Hmm.
responding to the challenges of a rapidly changing Brazil. His work reflected those social shifts, tackling things like social justice, inequality, and that search for meaning in a changing world.
So he was taking Spiritist principles and applying them to real-world problems.
Yeah. Absolutely. For Schutel, Spiritism wasn't just about saving your own soul or what happens after you die.
Right.
It was about building a fairer, more compassionate society right now.
Seems like he was ahead of his time in a lot of ways, advocating for social change, spiritual evolution, and always promoting critical thinking and open dialogue.
It is what makes him so intriguing. He wasn't just talking about spiritual concepts. He was putting them into action to create a better world.
We focus on his work in Brazil, but you mentioned his influence went international. How did that happen? Just his writings?
Well, his writings played a big role, definitely. They were translated into lots of languages, spreading his ideas far and wide.
Hmm.
But the launch of the Revista Internacional de Espiritismo was a turning point. It created a platform for Spiritists all over the world to connect and share their research, experiences, and ideas.
A global network of Spiritist thought way before the internet and social media.
Exactly. Early international collaboration, building connections across borders.
Remarkable. He wasn't just influencing Spiritism in Brazil, he was part of a much bigger movement.
And that brings us to another interesting part of Schutel's legacy: his role as a bridge builder.
Okay.
He wanted to connect Spiritism with other spiritual and philosophical traditions. He saw the common threads, the shared values, even when beliefs were different.
That resonates with me,
Yeah.
In a world that feels so divided, it's really inspiring to see someone dedicating their life to building bridges between different points of view.
It's a good reminder that even when we disagree, we can still connect, learn from each other, and build a more inclusive world.
It sounds like Schutel was a master at weaving together these seemingly different things: science and spirituality, social activism and personal growth, local impact and global reach. Are there any lesser-known things about him that might surprise people?
That's where it gets even more interesting. He's known for his Spiritism work, but there are these fascinating glimpses into other sides of his personality. For instance, did you know he was a big gardener?
The Bondurante of Spiritism, tending his garden. That's amazing.
It is, isn't it? It humanizes him,
Yeah.
Reminds us that even the most influential figures have simple joys.
Makes him seem more relatable, like someone you could just chat with over coffee.
Exactly. And it highlights the importance of finding balance. Even with all his writing, lecturing, and advocating, he still made time for peace and beauty.
And speaking of balance, get this, Schutel was also a talented musician. Played several instruments and even brought music into his Spiritist gatherings, believed in its power to uplift people.
It seems there was no end to his talents.
Mm.
Reminds us that we all have hidden depths,
Mm-hmm.
untapped potential waiting to be discovered.
He was a complex guy, wasn't afraid to embrace all parts of himself. But we can't ignore the controversies. We talked about his issues with the Catholic Church, but were there other challenges?
Well, he was outspoken, and he challenged traditional views, so naturally he attracted criticism. Some thought he was too radical, too far outside the norm.
Bit of a rebel, huh?
You could say that. He wasn't afraid to shake things up. And that led to disagreements, even within the Spiritist community itself.
Makes sense. Even within a movement, there can be different interpretations and ways of thinking.
Exactly. And this is where his focus on critical thinking is so important. He wanted people to discuss, to challenge dogma, to really understand their own beliefs, not just blindly follow.
He was a real champion of intellectual freedom, both within and outside the Spiritist movement.
Absolutely. And that commitment to honesty is a valuable lesson we can all learn from Schutel. True understanding comes from questioning, from looking at different perspectives, from challenging our own assumptions.
That's especially relevant today, don't you think? With so much information coming at us from all directions, we need those critical thinking skills to sort through it all and figure out what's true.
It all comes back to Schutel's core message, taking personal responsibility and the power of individual transformation. He believed we all have the potential to grow, to learn, to make a difference. It's a message of hope.
Inspiring, really.
It is. It's about our capacity for change and using our unique abilities to contribute to something bigger than ourselves.
This has been a fascinating look at Schutel's life and work. It makes you think about how we can apply all this to our own lives.
It does.
What can we do to really embody his legacy? We'll explore that and more in part 3 of our deep dive. Back for the final part of our Cairbar Schutel deep dive. It's wild, even after all we've talked about, there's still so much about him that's fascinating and relevant.
He does stick with you, doesn't he?
Uh,
His legacy goes way beyond just Spiritism. It's about the whole human experience.
It's amazing this guy was a pharmacist, a politician, a writer, a spiritual leader. He was like 5 people in one.
That's what makes him so interesting, right?
Yeah.
He's living proof that life isn't just a straight line. It's a bunch of threads all woven together.
And every experience adds to the others. It reminds me that we don't have to limit ourselves. We can be passionate about lots of things, pursue all sorts of interests, and find meaning in unexpected places.
He challenges us to rethink what a fulfilling life even looks like. Schutel didn't follow the usual path, but his impact was huge.
Exactly. And it wasn't about fame or success. It was about living by his values. Service, compassion, a thirst for knowledge. That's what his life was about.
And that's his true legacy, right?
Yeah.
Not just the groups he started or the books he wrote, but this message of hope, of change, of our own incredible potential.
Okay, but realistically, most of us aren't going to be like Schutel. What can regular people take away from his story?
That's the question, isn't it? One big takeaway is this: embrace your own unique passions. Schutel didn't shy away from his many interests. He combined them.
So find those overlaps, right? Where your passions and skills come together to create something totally new.
Exactly. You don't have to pick just one path. Embrace all the things that make you you. Let those different parts feed each other.
I love that. It's like we're allowed to explore, try new things, and trust that all those experiences will somehow come together to make a fulfilling life.
Schutel's life also teaches us about resilience. Remember all those hardships early on? Losing his parents and brother.
So much loss, but he never gave up.
He channeled it into this deep desire to understand, and he found comfort and purpose in Spiritism. Almost like those losses pushed him toward his spiritual path.
It's like we can't always choose what happens to us, but we can choose how we react.
Exactly. We can let those challenges crush us, or we can see them as chances to learn and grow and understand more deeply.
It's a good reminder that even when things are dark, there's always hope, always a chance for things to get better.
Another key takeaway is the importance of connection, of community. Schutel didn't do it all alone. He had people around him who shared his vision.
From going to seances with friends to starting O'Clarum with fellow spiritists, he really got that working together, having a shared purpose, makes a difference.
It shows how important it is to find your people, the ones who get you, who push you, who are there for you.
And he was all about dialogue, right? Open communication. That's something we can all use in our own lives. He wasn't afraid to talk to people who disagreed with him because he believed those conversations, done respectfully, could help everyone understand better.
In a world where it feels like everyone's in their own bubble, Schutel's approach is like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, we don't have to agree with everyone to have a good conversation, to learn something new, and to find common ground.
Exactly. Come into the conversation curious and wanting to understand, even if you don't agree.
And maybe the most important thing about Schutel is his belief in what people are capable of. He saw everyone as able to learn, to change, to make the world better.
It's both exciting and challenging, you know?
Hmm.
It's like he's telling us to take charge, to embrace change, and to use our talents to contribute to something bigger than ourselves.
And that message goes beyond any one time or culture.
It
No
does.
matter who you are, where you're from, what you believe, we all have the potential to live meaningful lives that make a difference.
Schutel's life was pretty extraordinary. He overcame so much, embraced change, and really believed in making the world a better place. It's definitely inspiring.
It makes you think, doesn't it? What unseen forces are at work in our own lives? What mysteries are waiting to be discovered? That's something for all of us to think about. Keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep digging deep into this amazing thing we call life.